Tēnā koutou katoa.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the Honourable Member Chris Okunvo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā koe. And I rise to speak in support of continuing the lobbying disclosure bill put forward by Holly Walker to the committee stages for further discussion. And I should congratulate Holly on having a member's bill drawn from the ballot. And I was most interested to hear that the sort of genesis of the bill was from Sue Kedgley, with whom I worked quite closely on a previous select committee. So I'm surprised, to be honest, that she isn't here, but no doubt she will be in touch. This is a bill drafted with good intentions, one could say, good intentions and noble intent. And it's the intent to promote the ideals of open government, which I'm sure everybody in this chamber would agree with. The government is supporting this bill to select committee because we see and value the need for a debate, Mr. Speaker, on access and influence of third parties to MPs and staff. Now, just as the previous speaker was perhaps a little harsh towards Simon O'Connor when he introduced his bill, I'm sure she won't mind if we level a little bit of gentle criticism on this one. Indeed, she has given notice of the fact that even in her own opinion, this bill probably does require a little bit of work, which is why we would like it to come to the Select Committee. Transparency around the activities of those lobbying MPs and their staff is an important element of open government and one which this bill aims to strengthen. From that point of view, it's a commendable bill, Mr. Speaker, as many bills which are discussed and debated in this House are. Commendable, but I would suggest flawed in several ways. The flaws with this bill, within them, some of them are really quite deep. I believe it can be helped through the Select Committee examination and a full submissions process. I have great faith in the ability of the Government Administration Committee, which I'm proud to be the Deputy Chair of. We work very productively, we're blessed with people with a lot of experience, and we will work towards the intent of this bill while ensuring that it doesn't, and this is the kicker, curtail fundamental rights of constituents and indeed of MPs in the process. Let's not forget that lobbying members of Parliament is a fundamental democratic right which goes to the very heart of a democracy, a right which in its current form this bill could be seen to detract from. It's the right of freedom of expression. I believe, Mr. Speaker, it was Keith Locke who once said, quote, all should be given the right to express a view, no matter how disconcerting it should be. Andrew, you should listen to this. Even the most difficult or abhorrent of issues. Implicit in free speech is the idea that the community benefits from an untrammelled exchange of views and that every participant might have to add to our enlightenment. That was Keith Locke. Likewise, Article 19 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information. These statements, Mr. Speaker, both make a vital and not always comfortable point. Freedom for all to hold and express opinions, to speak truth, to power, is essential to all societies. We members of Parliament can take for granted our ability to have, to say our piece. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that. We can come ourselves and stand in this chamber, and not just for ourselves, but also for those that we are elected to represent and for those who approach us to represent them. We must not dismiss or cast out the views of constituents due to their profession or whether they're paid to be there. We must promote engagement with MPs, giving them their fair hearing and allowing all constituents to speak their mind just as we are free to do so. Likewise, we mustn't compromise an MP's ability to engage in discussion with members of the public, be they doctors, be they unionists, be they members of Forest and Bird, Greenpeace or publicans. The Labour Party, may I suggest, would not be where it is today without the lobbying and access to the parliamentary precinct of the union movement. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. They wouldn't. How, too, would the Green Party themselves respond to greater restrictions on their own lobby groups? Would they be exempt under this bill? Well, probably, says the Attorney General. Indeed. If so, is this the intent of the bill? After all, is there a conspiracy coming from the party which sees conspiracies in so many other things? Is there a conspiracy in this bill after all? As a self-serving partisan attack which makes exceptions for some lobbyists but not for others? The author of the bill is shaking her head, and I am immediately consoled. But I think, Ms. Holly,
Order.
it might require a little bit more convincing than just an innocent shake of the head. Much of this scope for conspiracy and underhanded partisan trickery is due to the untidiness of the bill as it exists currently. As Charles Chauvel noted in his supplementary order paper on this bill, and he noted the Attorney General's report issued under Section 9 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990 points out that this bill is too broadly cast. Likewise, the definition of lobbying activity given is broad and unwieldy and in much need of greater clarification and honing and polishing by a select committee and the people on it.
You do. I do. You agree.
Mr.
Order.
Mr. Mallard is agreeing with the Attorney General. This bill also seeks to only legislate against lobbying activity when it is conducted for payment. I'll just say that bit again, Mr. Speaker. You may not have quite caught it. I'll try it again. This bill also seeks to only legislate against lobbying activity when it's conducted for, quote, payment. Where does payment begin and end? Furthermore, where does this leave non-salaried lobbying for economic? Well, but where does it leave non-salaried lobbying for economic gain? This lack of definition of payment or economic gain creates confusion, leaves the door open for wide-scale circumvention of the system that this bill has been defined to create. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand as a nation has always prided itself on both its transparency and its freedom of speech. But this bill solely rests on these aspects, then far from being transparent. If that's all it rests on, this bill is as murky as old dishwater. Indeed, rather than focusing on the exchanging of ideas and MPs learning through giving everyone a fair shake, the bill could prefer a very Hollywood style of us versus them mindset, which has no place in contemporary democratic politics. And yet, the largest misrepresentation the Greens appear to have gleaned from fiction when creating the bill appears to be the influence lobbyists have over politicians. It may surprise them to know that New Zealand is first in the world out of 182 countries as the least corrupt country in the world, according to Transparency International. Holly is nodding. She knows that.
Order.
We must always strive to better ourselves.
Order. Member must use an honourable member's full name.
I'm glad to see Ms. Holly Walker is nodding in agreement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While we always strive to better ourselves when it comes to transparency, this bill has a long way to go before it achieves that. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude by stating a hope that every bill passed into law by this House must not just have a noble intent, but a positive effect on the lives of those governed by it. Without this, even the best intentions are in need of redemption. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very